Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of MSP Business School. My name is Rob Rogers and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Brian Doyle and Tim McNeil. Welcome, fellas.
What's going on?
How you doing today?
Living well. Thank you.
Nice. I kind of wanted to, do a little bit of a different spin on what we're doing this week. I've been doing a lot of presentations for groups, peer groups and stuff over the last couple of months. And the one thing that I'm really starting to see is like, especially with COVID now, there is a big concern about the commoditization death spiral that people seem to feel like they're in, getting undercut by $20 here for a project and all those kind of concerns. And it seems to be amplified right now with COVID. And one of the things that I've been telling people is, just the reasons that they suck in sales in the MSP community is, in my opinion, they are attaching their strategies to the client's or the prospect's tactic, right? The client is in the business of selling widgets, and that's their strategy, right? Do they want to grow their top line growth and expand and get multi-location, or do they want to become more profitable? Those are their strategies, and IT is just a tactic to get them there. So why is our sales strategy aimed at their tactic, right? We should align our sales strategy to their sales strategy. And so that's what I've been talking to people about lately, because one of the benefits that I see in the IT space with IT owners especially is they're brilliant at solutions-based selling, right? They go in, they talk to a prospect, and the prospect says, oh man, do I hate my current MSP. My ISP is so slow, my MSP blames my vendor blames my ISP. And then you as the MSP owner just drill right into the issue, right? And just start trying to fix that issue on the, coming up with a solution. That's the IT brain, right? But then you've tied everything into just that issue. And then the next MSP that comes in there to, try and sell them does the exact same thing. And they solve the solution. So you both are just going in there to solve solutions. And then it becomes who does it for cheaper, right? So if you're attached to the tactics, that's a problem. And that's what I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about today. Do you see that in the industry? And, is it just me? Or
you hit on one of my biggest bugaboos when it comes to selling. And one of the things that I find to be most challenging is when a new rep, a junior rep, or an engineer that's supporting you goes in there and wants to immediately sell on the spot. And the way I look at things is much differently than that, right? Consultative selling is just that. It's consultative. That first meeting's fact finding, right? It's a mission. It's to understand what's driving that business and what are those obstacles that's in the way of these guys' success. From that, you're going to be able to figure out where these solutions might be. But the biggest thing you can do is sit there and go, oh, I've heard about that problem before. You need to do this. And you know nothing yet about their landscape. You don't know anything about how they operate. You haven't peeled back the onion enough yet to know, well, that's just a symptom to a bigger disease, inside the client's environment. But everybody wants to make that next sale, so they immediately leap to it. And then the other problem is a lot of times in the technology world, these technologists want to make sure that they're smarter than they are, right? And they want to show up and throw up with the facts they need. So I'm glad you're bringing this one up, Rob, because I really struggle with, getting people to understand when we're in those situations, take a breath, listen, and see what's going to happen next.
So so one of the things that I like to equate it to, Brian, is if you remember 10 years ago, and we were all in the industry 10 years ago, back then it was break fix, it was time plus overages. Yeah. You would sell them a 10 hour a month deal plus overages. And our strategies were misaligned, right? We made money when they were, going down. And if, they were making money, we weren't making money. So we changed our contract. So, we had no friction there. But we changed our contract so our strategy aligned with their strategy. But why didn't we change our selling methods? So our sales strategy was to find out what their growth strategy is and tackle that. So I think if people focus more in the beginning of the call on tell me everything about your business intelligence, what are you guys doing as a company in the next 1 to 3 years versus, okay, how can we solve this issue that, what brought us here today and how can we solve this issue? I think that will just completely switch the dynamic of the presentation.
And I do think we're starting to find that a little bit more now. It's still not where it should be, but the end of the day, I mean, you need to know as an MSP, when you're going into a sales call, you need to know what the goals are for the company. Like take out the technology. Like it's not, to me, it's not about the technology. It's about where do you want to be as a company? Like how do you want to stay where you are? And that's fine. We can help you with that. Are you looking to grow? How are you looking to grow? Do you want to add people? Do you want to add revenue? Do you want to increase your net profit? Do you want to increase your gross profit? Like, what are you looking to do? Like, focus on what the company is doing. And Brian, like you've said a million times, you've got 2 ears and one mouth. Shut up and listen.
Well, let's go, let's kind of play through that a little bit, Tim. One of the things that I've seen that's a challenge to getting it done that way is, look, you're coming in and confidently when you're going into a sales call now as a business owner, right? Having gone through those experiences. And those technical owners can do that a lot. But when we start moving downstream to our sales reps, they don't have that comfort level yet to have that business discussion. This is a common conversation we have during the ramp camps we run at VCIO Toolbox, where they're like, well, I don't think they're going to share that information with me. They act like it's a big proprietary secret, but the customer is looking at you as a business partner. And if you've really conveyed that you're a business partner, and even in the sales process, a prospective business partner, you're going to need to know where they're going to go to do that. And if you set the table appropriately, hey, I need to know this so I can be the best partner I can be to you, but more importantly, to keep myself in check. I want to make sure what I'm trying to bring to the table is going to push the needle for you and not just be the bright, shiny toy that we all think we need right now. Those are the things that you got to leverage. But man, a lot of people struggle bringing that part of the conversation forward. They just don't feel comfortable with it.
Well, and look, I can speak to that being a former salesperson in the MSP space. Like it's a tough go to walk into an owner and be like, hey, bud, what are your strategies for the next 5 years? And knowing that person knows you're not the owner, and it is. I see how that can be a real issue, but I do think that ultimately goes back to the MSP's culture in a way. It goes back to the MSP culture that they have, and how they've trained that salesperson, and what their philosophy is, right? Like it clearly will not happen day one, but ideally you do want to get. I think you want to work a salesperson into a position where they can go on a meeting and yeah, you're going to run across that owner that, quite honestly, he or she is just kind of a jackass, and they're not going to share their vision because they look at that salesperson as being underneath them, which I have always not understood, but whatever. Some people are like that. I think overwhelmingly, if somebody is trained correctly out of the gate to take those baby steps and eventually take that full sales meeting from beginning to end, that the owner on the other side of the table is going to look at them and say anything they would to an owner, maybe not the financial side, but everything else.
But you can get into business goals and business challenges without having to hit financial on day one. That's the reality. Yeah. And that's the part, I think, where everybody looks at sales training, sales tools, process, but they're not looking at the relationship side of it, right? You've got to build a relationship right there on the spot. What is a sales call? Look, they already know what side of the table you live on just by showing up, right? So, you're the buyer, I'm the seller. We got that off the table. Let's stop worrying about that concern. But now you got to build some sort of relationship. And I'm not talking, look, yeah, I want to know about your birthday and your dog and all the other things in life. But the truth is, you've got to build some sort of relationship in this first meeting where you're not going to get to that level of conversation, that they form a trust with you. And the only way you can do that is through the questions that you ask and the reasons that you ask them. But more importantly, the follow-ups that you ask. Anybody can bring in a question of consultative questions. Can you ask the follow-ups and dig deeper? That's where you get respect. That's where you start seeing that customer view you more as a strategist here to solve problems versus a solutions point person seller, God forbid VAR still, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways that I encourage my reps to, speak to it and trying how to get them into the conversation is to, say, look, I just want to go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of your time. And, but before I do, I was reading your About Us page, and I saw that you were, 20 people, you've been in business for 23 years, and you are the regional leader in selling widgets. That's what got you here. Can you tell me about the things that are going to be getting you there for the next 1 to 3 years? And if you kind of put it in, that's what got you here, what's going to get you there, it kind of sets you up to open up the conversation. And that's what's starting to help them like initiate the conversation. Give 2 to 3 bullet points on the About Us page, and then congratulate them, let them talk about it, and then say, well, what are you going to be doing to get you to the next stage in the next 1 to 3 years? That's what I found to be, kind of successful right now.
No, and I think that's awesome, kind of approach to it, because it's a very tactical way, which a lot of these guys think like to get to this bigger picture thing, which, for some people it's just innate and inborn with them. Right. But, I think in the approach that you got there, I think, where you can continue to expand on it is when you say go to there, I'd even say, what is there look like? You are here. What are the aspirational goals? What's the aspirations for the company? You're here. Is this where you want to be? Or is there more that's coming down the rainbow, right? Because we are going to walk into those clients every once in a while that say, no, right, here's where we want to be. We just want to maintain it forever, right? Think accounting firms, law firms, places like that, right?
Be more profitable.
We're good. And we want to keep being good because we're seeing our friends phase away, right? That kind of thing. Yep. So I think you're spot on. It's just a question of digging deep into, what is there for you? And when you find out what there is for you, it becomes very easy to start taking those goals and translating them into projects in your head. Just don't show up and throw out, man.
And that's the ticket there, right? Because that becomes the benefit, right? The feature is the project, the solution, whatever you're trying to fix is attached to a benefit that they care about now, right? Their growth goals. So then it's not just a generic benefit about what that really means to you. It's about what it means to the, corporate growth. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, a little bit different sales process, but even with VCIO Toolbox, the first 20 minutes of the demo is pretty much the customer telling us about their challenges, where they're struggling, not just in the MSP, as it relates to QBRs, VCIO and that stuff, but as it relates to being an MSP. And I'm telling you, that 20 minutes tells me how I'm going to do the next 40 minutes of the presentation.
I know.
It tells me where you're really struggling, and then I'm going to accentuate those portions, if they exist, of the process.
Totally agree.
Totally agree. All right. Yep. That's top 1%er right there. That type of, setup is top 1%er.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Rob, you're doing these teachings, you're kind of going through it. What are you seeing the response being to salespeople? Because, one of the things I see with salespeople sometimes, and I'm one of them, so nobody get fired up here, but we can get a little obstinate and we kind of get set in our ways and we think we know how we're doing it. How are these guys receiving it? How are you seeing, the people that you coach and counsel actually integrating this into their world? And what are the results you're seeing?
So, one of the first things that I saw was, that's great if you're talking to the owner of the business, but what happens when you're talking to the office manager? What happens when you're talking to the IT manager who doesn't know what's going on in the, the owner's head, right? And that was the number one thing that I got. But, if you open it up and talk about About Us and a couple of things that, got you here, people like to talk about it. Like the office manager doesn't mind talking about the company, what's cool about the company, tell me about the culture, and you start opening it up like that. They may not know the exact 1 to 3 year strategy, but they know if they were going to be expanding, but then they decided not to because of COVID. And they know that they're going into more of a, a turtle type of mode. So just because they don't know the ins and outs of the corporate strategy, if they are happy with what they're doing. They're braggy, right? People like to talk about what they're proud of and, their company, and they're going to know globally what they're trying to accomplish. We don't have any plans to hire any more people this year. Okay. We'll focus on the efficiencies and the profitabilities of your systems. Yep. You kind of want to put them in a bucket is what I'm telling the sales reps. Put them in a bucket where you're going to focus your presentation on the efficiencies and productivities and the automations and everything you can do to do more with less, or how you can make these systems scalable. And that's how you put them into one of those two buckets, and then your benefits are always related to that. And that once I explain that and the reps kind of practice that, then they start getting better and it starts to become more smooth. nobody wants to try and understand how to sell a widget. So that was the number one thing that I got. But I don't know anything about, law offices or how to make them more productivity. No, you don't need to know that. But you understand Teams. You understand that you can record and transcribe meetings inside of Teams now. So there's things that you can talk about that are related to IT that have nothing to do with the business, but have everything to do with productivity, efficiencies, and growth.
Yeah. So, we're getting near the end of our time here. Anything you want to close with on that, in terms of thoughts, Tim and Rob?
Yeah, well, the one thing I would add to that is even if you are talking to an office manager, which that would be an influencer to a heavy influencer, having a similar conversation with that influencer to me is always a good thing as well, because the goal is to get to that ultimate decision maker, and it's good to know where everybody's mindset is when it comes to what the organization is in general. Like, is everybody rowing in the same direction? Like when you sit with the influencer and they tell you one thing, you sit with the owner and they tell you a completely different thing, that's a red flag,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that means that they're probably not rowing in the same direction. Yep. So although different conversations, you can still get a sense of where people perceive the company to be going, even when you're talking to an influencer, which can be just as valuable as when you're talking to a decision maker. So I think that's one thing. If I were to just say one thing in closing is there's a lot of MSPs that they only want to sit with the decision maker. That it's decision maker or go home. And, to a certain extent, I get that. If you're an owner, you don't have a lot of time to just sit with influencers time and time again. That being said, they can be a huge ally for you. So when you are in front of an influencer, use it to your advantage and build that relationship to get to the decision maker and make sure that everybody is on the same page.
Yeah. Well said.
All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap up, Rob?
Well, I can't go after that. That was
all right.
Pretty well done.
Beautiful. So Tim, you just took us home. I'll just throw out there, you can get this episode, of course, over at mspbusinessschool.com and also visit all of our previous episodes. You can also find our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, and anywhere else that you get your great podcasts. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, please visit our website and submit as a guest with a topic that you'd like to talk about. We'd love to talk with you. And I want to thank everybody and have a great week.
All right. Take care.